The symbiotic relationship of the PAP and NTUC has allowed us, as ruling party, to run a government that is both pro-worker and pro-business at the same time. Tripartism undergirds the industrial harmony and economic success of Singapore. Other countries try to emulate us, but they cannot, because unlike us, they do not have the symbiotic relationship between unions and the governing party, and so they do not have the tripartism that we have. What is dangerously clear to us is that the Workers' Party will seek to dismantle this. When the Workers' Party attacks the symbiotic relationship between the PAP and the NTUC, and Mr. Gerald Giam said, and I quote, "I believe that unions must be independent and non-partisan," unquote. He is in fact saying that the Workers' Party will not align itself with any unions or form any relationship with any unions. The tripartism that we have in Singapore today, which many other countries want to emulate, only exists because of the close relationship and the mutual respect between the PAP and the NTUC. You dismantle this, everything falls apart. So all workers and employers should sit up and take notice, because the WP leadership wants to destroy tripartism as it stands here today. The Workers' Party will kill tripartism. And in its place will be a more adversarial form of relationship and systems that we see happening elsewhere. But here's the irony. David Marshall was the founding chairman of the Workers' Party. When David Marshall mooted the idea of forming, I quote, "a political party whose membership is exclusively confined to members of trade unions," unquote, and started the Workers' Party in 1957. The founding executive committee members of the party comprised 20 trade unionists and 10 non-unionists. Mr. Gerald Giam and the Workers' Party are completely ignorant about how the WP started as a party of unionists, and some of this information were obtained from their own website. Clearly, the Workers' Party is no longer a pro-worker party. Unions have long been a part of the WP's history. Somehow along the way, they lost the trust in the relationship with the unions. So now, Mr. Gerald Giam says, like a bit of a toxic ex-boyfriend, because I can't have a relationship with unions, no one else should have as well. There should be no love between any other political party and the unions. Fortunately for Singapore, tripartism under the PAP government is strong. And to NTUC and our unions, I say solidarity forever.
SMS Koh just now said that if WP comes to power, we will not form any relationship with any union. This is not true. And it's ridiculous for any governing party to not seek good relations with unions, when it's crucial for any government to work with unions and employers for the good of workers and the economy. What we are calling for is a key reform to untether the NTUC from the PAP and free up unionists to be independent advocates for workers in Singapore. An independent NTUC will be a stronger voice for workers, as they will be better able to fight for workers' rights without fear or favor. And note that I'm not calling for, I call for independent unions, not mindlessly confrontational unions. It is important for unions to work with the government of the day, but they should maintain their independence from the government and should not be subordinated to it. This will benefit Singaporean workers and strengthen our country's institutions, regardless of the political situation. And this isn't about politics, it's about getting the best possible deal for Singaporean workers and for Singapore. And lastly, SMS Koh mentioned the International Labour Organization. ILO's Convention number 87 on freedom of association and protection of the right to organize stresses that workers and employers organizations must be independent from public authorities, meaning the government, and free from government control or interference. This is found in Article 3.1, Article 3.2, Article 5, Article 8.2, and Article 11. Instead of having a symbiotic relationship with the PAP, the NTUC should declare a symbiotic relationship with the people of Singapore.
So actually, I would like to ask Mr. Gerald Giam whether he has personal experience or data points or even anecdotes to suggest that actually today, the symbiotic relationship between the PAP and NTUC has caused our unions or union leaders to face restrictions or not to be able to speak up without fear or favor. Because I would like to suggest that yesterday after your speech, I received so many feedback from many of our union leaders. And that's because whatever you said do not represent their experience on the ground. So I'll make 2 points in response to what you have just said. The first point I want to say is that the relationship between PAP and NTUC, the symbiotic relationship, is an equal partnership. Our union leaders are elected by the workers to represent them. It is not a subordinate relationship between the PAP and the NTUC. This symbiotic relationship is not to control the union, but rather we want to be able to serve, to listen, to be close to the ground so that we can better support and better speak up for the workers and better represent our workers in Parliament or even outside.
What I'm talking about is not so much that the unionists are not speaking up. What I'm saying is that there are institutional constraints on them that prevent them from being able to really push forward a lot of the policies. Because if in the current setup where the unions are, in what I feel, are subordinate to the PAP, the unions will only be able to push through their policies if their policies align with the PAP's priorities. They will not be able to override what the PAP wants to do. And can I ask the SMS whether he can cite any instance where the NTUC has taken a public position that's contrary to government policy in recent times?
I asked the honourable member about his personal experience, data, and he has not been able to cite those. In fact, so whatever he claims, he might have read it in other countries. I'm not denying that that is your opinion, that is your view, but I would like to suggest that we do not make those assumptions for Singapore because of what other people are practicing or because of what you read as a theory of how unions can work with the ruling party. Our colleagues have mentioned yesterday that it is not uncommon that unions across the world are aligned to political parties. We have gone over the years, worked very hard to make sure that we build this symbiotic as a strong foundation built on trust. And we are not about to give it up just because you have some theoretical framework that suggests that it's better for unions to be independent of the ruling party. On your point about your questions about whether we have policies that have differed from what the government suggests, I would gladly say that NTUC have been pushing for many policies that even over the years the government has not accepted, and we will continue to do so. The job support scheme is one very good example. Member Patrick has been raising it for 14 years. The government did not agree at the start, but finally they did. So, maybe you imagine that these policies come from the Labour MP. But no, let me assure you that these policies, ideas, suggestions came from the workers, came from the union leaders because they best represent their workers. They know what they need, and our job as a Labour MP is to represent them. Sometimes the government will listen to us and implement it immediately. Sometimes it takes more time, and sometimes we differ. But that's the nature of it. But we'll never flinch, and we'll never restrain ourselves from speaking up or have any fear or favour when doing so.
Mr. Speaker, I want to clarify the member's question about ratifying ILO Convention. Now, we do not ratify C87, Convention C87, because we require registration of unions, and that is to guard against what we call yellow unions. There are unions that might be acting on behalf of employers to the detriment of employees. And also to ensure that officers in the union were not convicted for criminal breaches of trust, because these are necessary to maintain the trust. The tripartite relationship is built on trust, so that there's trust between the tripartite partners involved in negotiation. And just so the member is aware that there are actually quite a number of countries that have ratified, but it might also be useful for you to know that countries like the USA and New Zealand have also not ratified this particular convention that you raised. Now, I listened to the members' defense of, a roundabout defense of why unions need to be independent and all, and Workers' Party will or will not seek relationship with unions. I'm very confused. Does the Worker Party want to build relationship with unions or not?
Mr. Giam?
Yes.
So are you saying that your relationship with a union is a transactional one, not built on mutual win-win and a symbiotic relationship?
So I think the SMS is having difficulty seeing anything between the full dichotomy of the dichotomy of full symbiosis and full confrontation with unions. We are calling for a third way, which is independent unions with tripartite dialogue to work towards achieving win-win outcomes for both workers and employers. So it is this approach that we are trying to take. We're not trying to say that we don't work with unions at all, or we are in full relationship and symbiosis with unions. There's a third way in between.